But if this seller is maybe a little bit stubborn, they think that the house is perfect. They think that there aren't any issues. All right. It's going to be tough. It's going to be tough to ask for credit and get it accepted. This is where the buyer's agent shows value, because mentioning it to the listing agent saying, hey, this house has some issues. Well, you can request it, and letting the listing agent know, hey, we're going to request this. Our attorney's going to request it to the other attorney. We'd appreciate if we can come to an agreement here. All right, that shows value. Hello and welcome to the Curington Now show. I'm your host, RJ Curington. I'm a real estate planning, and business law attorney in Illinois, Indiana, Florida, and New York. And on the show, we talk about all things wealth, business, real estate, and estate planning, and how to protect your wealth and how to grow it. And today, we're talking about the real estate journey, and when you're buying property, whether to accept the contract as is, and in some states it is as is, but in Illinois we're talking about specifically, it's either you can select the property as is, or you can take it and have an inspection and make requests. So we'll talk a little bit about what that is and all those things, and whether you should have it as is or not. But to preface, when you're buying a property, you really want to know what you're buying. Okay, so that's first and foremost. And when I say what you're buying, it's really the type of property and the things that you may not consider long-term when you're buying with regard to the property's condition. So that's what we'll talk about today. But before we get started, wow, what an episode of the Night of the Seven Kingdoms. I'm watching, and I haven't watched the finale, but I'm very excited to watch it tonight. As I'm posting this, or as you're listening to this, I saw the second to last episode, and it was a masterpiece. I mean, it was one of the greatest episodes of television I've ever seen, and I love television and love good television, not just anything. I really love the cinematic masterpieces that some of these producers and directors make. It's outstanding. But that, really excited about that. I'm not going to have any spoilers or spoil anything for anyone, but it is definitely a masterpiece. So I'm excited to see the last of the season there. Hopefully there's another. I think there's going to be another season. But House of Dragon, that's something that's going to come out, I believe, this summer, I'm hoping. So that's something that we may be exploring or talking more about in the podcast, just because it's an interest of mine. But alas, here we go. Let's get started. So an inspection. So, we can talk about Florida a little bit later and how that's an as-is. So Floridians, please bear with me. We're going to focus on Illinois right now. Indiana, New York, we're just going to focus on Illinois. And there may be some overlap in some other states, but particularly Illinois. And I mean, this could be universal, but when you're taking a property as is, all right, you're taking it as you see it, essentially. The as is something where you're taking the property with all the scratches you see, all of the things you see in plain sight. So, I mean, let's just get a definition here of what that is. So when you say as is condition, you're really saying the buyer is accepting the property in its current condition and will not pay for repairs, improvements, cleaning before closing, etc. And so this is something that's doesn't sound great, right? It doesn't sound great. I mean, the buyer is accepting all responsibility for the home's condition, including the potential hidden issues. And so, it can be a little bit scary because you're accepting it, and you're not buying it with, you're not buying a house that's free of any defects. And yes, you're a homeowner now, and so there are going to be things that you're going to have to fix. But we want to make sure we always have an inspection, okay? Because that inspection will uncover those hidden or latent defects that we just can't see. And so when you're viewing those things, all right, when you're having the inspection and you get the inspection report, you want to make sure you're seeing those items. And the inspection reports are fantastic because they really detail and outline what is and isn't a high priority, okay? So I'm just going to talk about the contract itself. So, in Illinois, you have it where you can select the contract, whether it's as is or not, okay? And then you can either waive inspections, which I strongly discourage, all right? I don't care if you're 100% comfortable with moving forward with it. I think you always should have an inspection. When you waive it, you're waiving an inspection and you're waiving for sure any requests. Okay, now some of the times, like when you're in attorney review in the inspection period, you can make these requests and requests for repairs or requests for seller credit. So that's something to keep in mind if you're going as is and having a right to inspection with requests or a right to inspection without requests. And so even with requests, all right, it only taught, you can only really request the major components. That's the phrasing. Okay, so you have central heating and cooling systems, the HVAC, the plumbing and well system, electrical system, roof, walls, windows, doors, ceilings, floors, appliances, and structural and mechanical components. All right, but anything else, minor repairs, routine maintenance items, painting, decorating, or anything that's really cosmetic, all right, that's going to be something that you won't be able to request, okay? And it gives the seller actually a right to terminate the contract and take the buyer's earnest money, which is what we know as that good faith amount, or that amount that is put as a good faith intention to move forward with the transaction. So really want to not make those types of requests that are minor repairs. All right, and then we definitely want to give notice in a timely manner, and depending on the state you're in Illinois, it's 5 business days after the acceptance of the contract where you want to make these requests. And it's usually in conjunction with the attorney review. That's even why we're mentioning it, because we see this a lot in the attorney review period, which is also 5 business days after the acceptance of the contract. All right, and then we know not to provide the full report to the seller. Okay, you just can't do that unless the seller specifically asks for the report or asks for that section of the report that you're requesting. All right, so you have that right to inspection with request, and then there's the right to inspection with no request. All right, and so that one is pretty self-explanatory. You have an inspection, you can have the inspection, but you can't make requests. And so what I want to talk about here is that you can make requests if it's a severe safety or structural hazard. And I'm not saying this to say to make your offer stronger, put right to inspect with no requests, and you could still make a request. No. You want to honor the terms, you want to honor the contract, but if there is a severe safety hazard or severe structural hazard or severe health hazard that you find in the inspection, then you want to make sure that you can request those and at least mention those to the seller to say, the HVAC is inoperable. It's not turning on. A problem. It's going to be a problem. And really, I think of this as like anything that makes the home uninhabitable, unlivable. All right. And so when you're doing that inspection report, think of what will make this house unlivable. All right. So when you're making the request and you're coming up with credits, okay, now credits are something where you want to really make sure that when you're asking for credit, it's reasonable. All right. You don't want to ask for $50,000. I mean, you can, but the seller is likely going to reject that offer, accept the contract, and terminate it altogether and say, hey, I'd rather go with another buyer. This buyer is unreasonable. All right. Okay. So we want to make sure that you're being reasonable here. So another thing that you want to figure out, or how to come up with the seller credit amount, is talk to a general contractor. All right, and we can connect you with one. We know of several that is experienced and knows the world of general contracting. I mean, everyone should that's licensed, but really getting the reviews on the company and things like that to just make sure they're valid. But they'll give you a good quote, and that's something that you can negotiate with the seller. Kind of let agents and buyers know you can request credit, but you really need to know the temperature of the seller, all right? How motivated they are to help in this regard. If they have an inclination that repairs and seller credit are forthcoming, then hey, by all means, make the request. All right, it's most likely going to be honored. But if the seller is maybe a little bit stubborn, they think that the house is perfect, they think that there aren't any issues, all right, it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough to ask for credit and get it accepted. And this is where the buyer's agent shows value, because mentioning it to the listing agent, saying, hey, this house has some issues, that are severe in nature with regards to safety, health, and structural. So, the roof is collapsing, okay, or the security cameras aren't working, or there's the water heater and things like that are just not working. There's no cold or hot water, okay. Things like that, the plumbing, the toilet's absolutely broken. Things like that. The smoke detectors aren't functioning. All right, we want a credit for this, and we think that it's reasonable. I mean, we could not have known this from a plain view of the property. So you can request it, and letting the listing agent know, hey, we're going to request this. Our attorney's going to request it to the other attorney. We'd appreciate if we can come to an agreement here. All right, that shows value, and that is proactive, and that shows like, hey, we want to get ahead of this before the attorneys are involved and are providing their letters during the attorney review and inspection period. And you can always request a home warranty if you're not feeling comfortable with the request or credits. You can ask for a home warranty, and that guarantees you for a year or two that if anything is an issue, the appliances stop working or something is inoperable, then you can make that request to the home warranty company, and they'll supply a new appliance or install something for you. All right, so that's something to keep in mind when you're negotiating. Okay, so once that letter is sent, then the seller provides it to the seller's attorney provides it to the seller, and they go through it and they answer it, and they come back with a response to the buyer. If the attorney that you're working with has crafted the language that makes it more amiable to being accepted or being approved for repairs, things like that, seller credit, then you should be in the clear. It should be pretty quick. But if the list is a laundry list, a grocery list of items that you want repaired, then it's likely going to get denied. I mean, sometimes, again, if the seller knows that it's coming, they'll agree to them. And if it's, in not an as-is contract, they'll agree to it. But if you're asking for a laundry list and it's as-is, I mean, I would not be surprised if that contract gets terminated. And I've seen that happen. So, you have seller attorneys, you have sellers that are just like that. They'll cancel the deal and say, hey, we have other backup offers. We're not dealing with this. All right, even though they're going to have to deal with these different inspection items with any buyer that they work with. So those are things to keep in mind. I really love the negotiation aspect of this part because we have to do what's reasonable, and we all want to get to the same conclusion when we're buying and selling a home. And in a real estate transaction, we want the deal that can be completed. All right, so that's really all that I can think of with regard to the inspection items. I'd love to hear what you think. With regard to these inspection items, the last thing, when it's the final walkthrough, making sure that these items are repaired. If they were agreed to be repaired, you want to make sure that they're agreed to. All right, you want to make sure that they've been done when they've been agreed to. And that's typically at the final walkthrough. But even before then, you can, nudge the seller and ask through your agent and the attorney, hey, have they been done? And the attorney reviewed and inspection period, you can even ask when they're done, provide an update, provide completion of the work by a professional, evidence of it, invoices, receipts, etc. So those are things that come in. And then in that final walkthrough, if there is something that's a problem or was not fixed accordingly or installed accordingly, then you can make sure that those things are done by either holding back funds in escrow until they're done and holding it in escrow and not closing until they're done, or just waiting until you have the items completed. And typically I say have the final walkthrough a day before. You have 24 hours before the closing to do it, anytime within that 24 hours. But I'd say getting it in on the earlier end. If you have a 9 a.m. closing on Tuesday, have the walkthrough at 9 a.m. on the day before. All right, and so on Monday. So you'll want to have that so that you have a full day to get those things repaired or rectified if they haven't been done. So that's what it is, and I really recommend that you do work with an attorney and do work with an agent so that they can help you navigate this process of the inspection, which is a somewhat overlooked part of it. It's very important to have it. I mean, the amount of money that you'll spend on an inspector is well worth the money. I mean, you're getting a full detailed look regarding the entire property, and this is what you're going to have to deal with and know about. So why not invest in it? All right, so that's it. I'm really glad if you stayed for this long, you're ready to be a homeowner. All right, and so give us a shout if you have any questions or concerns. You can reach out to me on Instagram at CuringtonLaw.LLC. You can come to the website. You can reach out on LinkedIn. I'm on everything, so feel free to reach out if you have any questions. And if you have any comments, feel free to comment in the comment section below. And if you are interested in hearing more content, like, comment, subscribe. All of your feedback is much appreciated. All right, so until next time, have a good one. Full disclaimer here, none of the information in this podcast constitutes a client-lawyer relationship formation or constitutes legal advice in any way. It's merely general knowledge. Thank you.